Hi there. I have some questions that have been waiting for an answer for a long time, and I thought I would just answer a few things as best I could and put them out there. Um, this question comes from Julie, and it's from months ago, but she asks, can you please ask about when the Tesla towers will be built so the world may have free electricity? Um, So I, in looking at the future, have not seen Tesla towers at all. They are, I consider them now to be kind of like a prototype that proves the concept that there's this plasma energy that is available, but that's not what I see generating electricity for people in the future. Everybody has some sort of personal gadget or technology that is pretty powerful, and it runs their house and they own it. And so um, if they go to that house, they take their gadget with them and it generates electricity for the whole house. And that's really, I think, some sort of plasma generator. And Tesla towers are big, they're clunky, they're kind of stunning in what they produce, but I don't see there's uh, that there's any charge for electricity. There's a charge to buy the generator, which is small. The generators get smaller and smaller as time goes by. But then you generate however much electricity you want or need. So that's the free part. Any kind of system set up by somebody building towers, stringing wires, um, building pyramids, whatever, uh, those things, people are going to be charged for that because big elites like to set up systems that they can charge others money to use. So that's not the way the future unfolds. Okay, good question. Mary B says, when you say you don't see cars in the future, what modes of transportation do you see? Teleportation. If the demand for widespread travel fails, it would seem to imply that we are more locally self-sufficient. Am I correct in assuming so? Yeah, Mary, you are. When you look at the big expanse of history, what I see is that there's forms of transportation and then there's nothing. And then there's some new form of transportation, and then I don't know, things blow up and there's nothing. And that cycle seems to repeat. When I look at the future, especially when I was with the little men in brown robes, there were no road, I can't say there were no ground-based vehicles. There were these pathways and families who lived in proximity, like in a family business neighborhood, 200 people maybe, sometimes as many as almost 2,000, but most of the families were small. They had these little carts, electric carts that went along those paths. But for bigger travel, there was some other form of transport that was amazingly fast. It was not an airplane, and it did not run on whatever airplanes run on, jet fuel, I think. So and a few people had vehicles, personal vehicles that flew. They were not very big, and often a family of say 200 would have one of these, but they didn't really go anywhere. They didn't have anywhere to go. There was a lot of people who were missing. There weren't very many people on the planet, but There's always a need for transportation, always. It just gets more sophisticated and then less sophisticated. And we are coming to a time when we have the chance of having some very sophisticated transport. I actually am looking forward to that a lot because it grieves me when I drive, 10 miles, 11 miles to town and see 3 dead deer and 2 dead raccoons and maybe a dead rabbit, a dead squirrel, and something else in that 10 miles. It's like, oh, wow. What, does anybody care that those roads chop up the animal kingdom and make life very dangerous for them? Yeah, some other kind of transport that is not nearly as destructive to the animal world is part of the thinking of the future. Okay, so let's see. And then Cedar. Cedar says, what is your look at the transhumanist agenda in the US? And what is your view of the poisonous chemtrails with their heavy metals and nanotech? Are the nanobots being found in unvaxxed human blood from the chemtrails? Yes. I would love to hear your eagle-eye view on Team Humanity versus the transhuman agenda. Cedar, I have a piece, it's a long piece that I put out, I recorded. I don't know if it ever got posted because lots of reasons. I won't go into all that, but I do not look kindly on the transhumanist agenda. I do see that our planet, our people, our population divides into people who say, oh, that's all right. That's not going to bother me. And others who say, I want no part of that. I want to be a natural human, et cetera, et cetera. But I have some information that takes a deep dive into the whole transhumanist thing. And if that has not been posted, I will record that again and put it up because it is something to be aware of. And the progress toward that is moving at a pretty good clip. Okay, let's see. So then Nessie says, this is sort of a question. She says, agreed to something. Plus the changes with Earth itself, the pole shift, how do those two issues come together? When the poles shift, the Earth is going to change. Climate changes, sometimes the Earth rolls a little bit. That's a big deal. And then there are the changes with not just the pole shift is actually called a magnetic excursion, but there are other signs that we're moving into a micronova, the setup for a micronova, which happens regularly on our planet. So, and it's the way, this is something that the little man in brown robe said so long ago, and I kind of freaked out and then tried to just forget about that. So it's like, I don't know how to deal with that. But the planet cleanses herself. And we need to understand planetary cycles. What is the life cycle of a planet? What keeps a planet and everything on that planet alive? And it's an ability to clean itself up from time to time, renew its charges, because everything is an electrical system, and the Earth is an electrical body. It's a living, conscious body, just like we are. So that micronova, if you want to find out what happens in a true full micronova, then maybe you want to read Consciousness and Energy, Volume 4. because I go into great detail about what happens, and it's pretty shocking. It's pretty overwhelming. Even to this day, I'm still like, oh, okay, do I want to say anything about that? Um, the pole shift itself changes all the magnetics, changes if the poles in their excursion, they kind of walk away from the North Pole, and the South Pole. Um, so right now the two poles are moving toward India and Peru, and that's not their normal position. But where the poles are determines, how do I say this, determines the rotation of the planet. So if the South Pole is on top and the North Pole is on the bottom, the planet's going to rotate from east to west instead of west to east. Things like that. There's a lot of things that would change if the poles actually change. They are renowned for, we'll say, going on a walkabout, having a magnetic excursion, and then returning to where they belong. Belong meaning where we expect them to be, or where they've always been in our experience. But if they fix themselves in some other location, India could become the new North Pole and Peru could become the new South Pole. That is a huge change. And the weather would change accordingly. Okay. So we live in a very dynamic world. And even though things don't happen fast in terms of planetary systems, they do happen. And we happen to have been born in a time when it's, we'll say, very interesting things we are learning about the planet. Okay. Okay, next. Naomi says, do you want to be one with Canada and Mexico or retain sovereignty? So I have to say that I grew up right across the river. You could practically spit across the St. Clair River and into Canada. Canada was our backyard. And we went over there to swim, to play, to eat, to dance, all kinds of stuff. And so I never really thought of Canada as another country until I tried to get into Canada back in March when I was going to the WU conference, and they said, where's your passport? And I'm like, what do I need that for? But it is officially another country. And I don't have any problems whether they stay a separate country or become part of the US. It's fine with me either way. And same with Mexico. I personally think a lot of the national divisions are pretty arbitrary. And, I don't really see those. I see those as very artificial, those divisions, those boundaries. Yes, they're important to a nation to have a boundary and to protect that boundary. But if we all decided we don't want those boundaries, so what? We would do something different. We would have something different. It might not be the nation we are familiar with, but we'd have some other arrangement. So I just happen to love Canada and Mexico and the people in both of them. I've been to both places. People are wonderful wherever you go. So Blue Farmer asks, he's referring to some situation, and he says, such situations and events appear so large and complex. Could any individual action have any effect? Very interesting. I have noted that there are some people who are oblivious to what is happening and perplexingly completely uninterested. They refuse to acknowledge large aspects of our collective reality related to drones, ongoing wars, other conflicts, etc. What is driving this? So, Blue, I think if you're asking about what's driving their lack of attention and their lack of interest, that's just how they are. They are people who typically have not been introduced to their own power. They don't think they have any, and so they don't try to do anything in which they would deliberately use their power to have an impact. The thing that is that should be taught is that every single word you say, every single act you make or do or don't do has an impact on the whole reality system, the whole cosmos, everything. And it never gets erased. So, if you're just one little guy, maybe it's not going to be a huge impact, but by gosh, you're going to have an impact. And if you keep on putting that same thought, those same words, that same action out there, it starts to have a greater and greater impact because now you're building an energetic response in your local area, and that is beginning to have a much bigger impact. So people are often afraid. They're young. A lot of people are immature. They don't really know themselves. They don't really believe anything in terms of what they could become. And so the best thing is to let them learn at their own pace, let them unfold in their own way. So, you pay attention. If one of those people that has not been paying attention asks you something, try not to drown them with information as if you're trying to feed them from a fire hose, because they'll be overwhelmed and back away. But yeah, there's a lot of people who just wait to be told what to do. I call those people the sheep, and I personally think they are very important because they go along with whoever is in power. In some ways, that's bad, and in other ways, that's good. But if, let's say you were a king and you wanted to make a change, you need people to go along with that change. So we need all those sheep, all those followers, and we don't need to be making fun of them either, because they stabilize change. And that's really important. C.L. Freeman asks, why isn't anyone addressing the topic of body area networks or Internet of Bodies that Sabrina Wallace and Non-Vaxxer 420 is disclosing? I'm not sure why nobody is talking about that, Freeman. A body, most people do not understand that they are an electric vehicle, that they are an electric body. The whole system runs on electricity. And they don't understand what has happened via chemtrails, people breathing in nanotechnology. And then the shot, the thing in the arm, being injected with nanotechnology. That technology is then organized by 5G and other, I'm going to say it this way, by very specific and carefully modulated sequences of frequency that are projected toward the population. You can say that that's 5G, but it's more than 5G. Okay, 5G is kind of a catch-all term, but those nanotech things do organize within the human body, and the human becomes an augmented projector. Let's say that we didn't have any technology internally. Okay, the human being, the human brain, is a transmitter and a receiver of radio signals, and maybe not in that particular band, but frequency. We project thought, other people pick it up, etc. We receive thought. Sometimes you have this feeling of somebody, you just think of somebody, and all the 2 minutes later, they call on the phone. You're picking up their intent to call you. They're reaching out to connect. What are you actually doing? You're reading their frequency waves coming at you. The brain is an amazing, amazing tool. So we're already receivers and projectors, transmitters. The body area network just augments that. And the thing that most people don't understand is that once you have that set up and working, what most people are going to say is, they have changed me. They're controlling me. They don't realize that that control can go the other way. If you are a projector and you are augmented, or you're a transmitter and you're augmented, you can send that signal right back to the equipment. So we have not been taught about our capacities, our capabilities, etc. And so we don't use it, unfortunately. So, and I think the powers that be like it that way. They don't want us to think of ourselves. They don't want us to think of ourselves as a, somebody in power, part of a network, a node that is paying attention and conscious and working independently of whatever they're trying to do. So, yeah. So just be aware. I've listened to Sabrina once or twice, but the stuff that she's saying is stuff that I've known for 40 years, and so there's a factor that I'm going to say is really critical, and it's timing. When people aren't ready, you can tell them 100 times and they just don't get it. It's like my daughter trying to explain QuickBooks accounting principles to me. I get it for a minute, but as soon as I go do something else, it's like, what did she say? I don't have the background and I don't have the interest. I just do my best. Okay. Okay, let's see. PLR 12 says, it seems likely that this earth has been under the control of negative, evil forces for eons. Is it not possible that those who lost the earth to these controllers have intentions of assisting humanity during these times of certain opportunities? Yes, and there are people that are helping, but the rule of thumb among all off-planet people is you have to lift a finger to help yourself. In other words, they aren't going to do it for us. And I've said that before, it bears repeating. And there are always, we need a different mindset around good and evil. Good is anything that furthers the kind of life that we are familiar with. Evil is the matching but opposite kind of energy that creates a different kind of life and operates according to different principles, the opposite of what we would call good. And that is the way of the world. Counter-rotating forces create all form and experience and realities and. So we have had counter-rotating forces for forever. We call that evil. So, and then of course religions get in there and they capitalize on that fact. The devil is going to get you. That is not really correct. You have to be willing to open to those other forces in order to be gotten. I guess I'll say it that way. And yes, there are all sorts of people trying to help. Okay. I'll just leave that there for now. And then the last one, something Akasha of the Nile. I think I've got that right. Says, I had 3 very vivid dreams last year. I was outside and a ship came over us. I and the others were mesmerized. It was so mechanical and beautiful. And then it starts shooting at us using DEW, D-E-W. People running, screaming, trying to get away. The odd thing is, each dream was a different ship, but with the same ending. It stayed with me because the dream was so vivid and creepy. I have followed Dr. Greer for at least 15 years and I have no fear of extraterrestrials. So it wasn't because I had a fear of them. I hope this wasn't a prophetic dream. So, Akasha, I'm going to say a couple things. Number one, when you have a dream, there's always a message for you. That message is, this is how you are creating reality. This is how you are perceiving reality. This is how you are responding to reality. So the ship coming over you and then shooting at you with DEW, that can be interpreted as that ship is, we'll say it is an expanded intelligence, another form of intelligence, ET intelligence, telling you to do something. And instead you freak out and run away. Okay. So the fact that it was a different ship each time says that there are different aspects of your life where you are being invited to get a bigger picture, have a more expansive view of life and consciousness and what is required from you. And you have to do something about that. You have to take action. So that's one thing. The other thing is it could be a prophetic dream. Because we have some fake extraterrestrial vessels, quite a few actually, that look, sound, act, and move just like ETs. And the powers that be were planning to use some of those ships to literally attack people and then claim, oh, those are ETs, when they weren't. They were some of our people being bad boys or bad girls. It could be that. Okay. So, those 3 vivid dreams might have been in response to hearing that there's a false flag being planned for ET activity. We haven't seen that yet. I hope we don't, because it isn't going to be any good ETs participating in something like that. It's typically going to be breakaway civilization, people, rogue military, etc., etc. So if it were me, I would be asking, okay, what am I being urged to take action to do, to understand, to get a bigger, better picture of? Because that's what UFOs symbolize. When I first was struggling after Kundalini had happened, UFOs were chasing me left and right, and I would run screaming and hiding. And the UFOs were beautiful. They were jeweled, and it didn't matter. I was terrified. It took me a while before I realized, oh, that's a new form of intelligence chasing me. So be aware. Okay. All right. So that's all the questions that I have for this little segment. I hope it was helpful, and I'll be back with some more.